Thanks, Joe. Thanks for your service and thanks for inviting me. I am an addict. My name is Pete, and I did have the privilege of being able to celebrate 41 years clean yesterday. And there's some people in this room that have a lot to do with that. I definitely didn't do it alone. When I got here, you know, uh, I was at the end of a failed life, and and I had tried my best. I had given it my best shot. I had a lot of screwy ideas, and some of them panned out some of the time, but you know, for the most part, I always seemed to wind up on my ass. And I wasn't on my ass when I got here. I was doing pretty good at that point. I had been on my ass a couple years before. I'd been suicidal for about 4 months when I got out of the Navy. When I was in the Navy, I just, I had learned how to party hard and work hard, and I was a very functional addict. I'd learned how to apply my intelligence to the best of my ability. When I got to I'd signed up for 6 years in the Navy, uh, and because they had the wave of the future in 1973 was nuclear power, and I had fucked off all through high school, and me and my buddy Cy in our senior year, we figured, let's we started being concerned about our future, in the middle of senior year of high school. We started worrying about what are we going to do, and I knew I wasn't college material. I hated education with a passion, and I just couldn't wait. But I wanted to graduate because Cy and I decided we were going to go into the Navy on the buddy program, and why the Navy? Because they had cool uniforms. They had bell bottoms, and we figured we'd get all the chicks with the cool uniforms, and I like the idea of a girl in every port and all that kind of thing, and it was very little thought was put into my future. I'll put it that way. I was a good addict that way. Uh, and then my plan was my family was moving to Connecticut in the middle of my senior year, and I was going to stay behind and go into an apartment with my brother, my older brother, who was staying in Pittsburgh, and I was going to finish up, and then join the Navy. But in the middle of a really, middle of a slow winter, we were used to having all these big parties in the fall out in the woods and stuff, and everybody was bored out of their minds, and I thought it would be a good idea to throw a little party at my parents' house while they were out playing bridge. And not only did I think it was a good idea, about 150 of my closest friends thought it was a good idea, and we took over my parents' house, and needless to say, that got me a ticket to Connecticut. I didn't get to finish up my senior year in Pittsburgh. I got to move to Connecticut with them, and my mom was in recovery. She was actually a recovering addict herself. She was in the other program. None of my family had ever heard of NA until this guy told me about it. This guy Steve Caskey told me about it in the 12 Keys Clubhouse. But the AA had been in my family since 1945. I had a great uncle who was he was in too bad a shape to go to my parents' wedding in 1945, and his siblings stuck him in a hospital in Pittsburgh, and some 12 steppers found him there, and he walked out of that hospital a free man. And through a weird set of circumstances, a guy that he had sponsored who couldn't get the program. This guy was chronic relapser, but Uncle Jerry never gave up on this guy. And about 20 years later, this guy is sitting on a bar stool in Kent, Ohio, and he gets to be good buddies with this kid. And this kid turns out to be my Uncle Pat, my mom's little brother. And this guy tells him, this guy 12 steps my Uncle Pat on a bar stool. When he realizes that he's the nephew of this guy that never gave up on him, he tells him all about the 12 steps. He says right up the road in Akron is where they got all this, and he took him to the hospital that they detox people in. And he said, if it ever gets bad, just go, get your wife to bring you here and they'll take care of you. And about a couple years later, my Uncle Pat was on a bridge, getting ready to jump into the Cuyahoga River in Ohio. And he remembered this stranger. We don't even know the guy's name, but he remembered this guy. And he went home and told Aunt Dottie to take him up to the hospital in Akron. And, and he sobered up, that's what they call it there. I know we don't. But a couple of years later, my mom went up to a big gathering, they called it Founders Day, old Bill W. was there and everything. And my mom got to meet Bill W. And, she came back home to Pittsburgh and she called my uncle up and said, I want to do what you did, because my mom was a serious addict. I mean, she had a whole pharmacy in her medicine cabinet on top of, drinking like a fish. And she was crazy. She had tried killing herself about 5 times in the previous couple of years. And, so she went up to Akron. Her brother said, get on a bus. She went up there and she got into the program. And she had one relapse when my oldest brother got married. I got to see that. I never saw, I was 9 when she got, and she's, got clean. I call it clean because she got off all that shit. She got clean, and 4 years later, my oldest brother got married, and there was a whole rigmarole about that. And she wound up having a relapse, and it was a one and done for her. She came back from that relapse and she was done. And she stayed clean till, I held her hand when she drew her final clean breath at age 88. She chain smoked into her 60s. She lived to be 88, 44 years clean. And, my mom was a game changer. My mom did a lot of 12-step work in her lifetime. There are thousands found this program because of my mom, fund 12 steps. And ironically, she was running this alcohol hotline in the state of New Jersey, and they got calls for people of all kinds of addictions and everything. NA had existed in New Jersey since the early 70s, had been in Philadelphia since 70. They were in Cherry Hill, right across the river from Philadelphia. And this is a statewide referral service. And until Steve Caskey told me about NA, my mom had never heard of NA. She was like, what's that? Like I had started trying to get clean 3 years before that, and I couldn't find any NA, and it was 1977. NA was all over Philadelphia. There's at least 5 meetings, and in New Jersey and everything. But I just couldn't get with anything. When I got out of the Navy, I was just on my ass, but I was scared. I was scared. I was seriously scared. I was losing my mind. I felt like I'd gone around a bend that I wasn't going to get back from. And I just had this moment of I got to get out of here. And I left Norfolk, Virginia, and I came up and, and my parents said, you can stay here as long as you stay clean. I said, that's what I want to do. So I stayed clean for 4 months. And I wanted to kill myself every day. Every day I wanted to kill myself. And, finally I went into the VA hospital. They had, I watched a lot of TV during that time, when you're seriously depressed, you can kind of try to lose yourself in TV. And one night at 2 a.m, I was looking at the Philadelphia Inquirer TV section, because all the shows were off. So I was kind of planning my next day, like, what am I going to watch tomorrow? And they had this ad, are you depressed? Big black letters. And I'm like, does Nixon need a friend? Yeah, and so I answered the 10 questions, and I answered 9 of them yes. And, and it said, if you answer 3 or more of these, you may be clinically depressed. And I felt like it was the first right thing I'd done in 4 months. I was like, wow, I felt good about that, and I called this program. The University of Pennsylvania had this depression clinic they were running. And I thought they might do some kind of brain surgery on me or something, figure out what the hell was wrong with me. And I didn't care at that point. I just, I at that point, I knew I wasn't going to kill myself because I tried a bunch of times walking across the Ben Franklin Bridge over the Delaware River, sticking my head in an oven in my brother's apartment in Philadelphia. I can still smell that gas, that I stayed in there long enough until I was starting to lose, fall out. And then I thought of my brother walking in with a cigarette. Anyway, long story short, they diagnosed me manic depressive, and they put me on something for that. And between that and my roommate in there, you know, it was a 2-month inpatient thing, and my roommate in there had some kick-ass weed. And I discovered a nice combination between the lithium and the marijuana. And I was like, I found my comfort zone. And I got out of there and I got on my feet. I got a decent job. And I didn't know anything about spiritual principles. I didn't know anything about, you know, being an addict, none of that. I suspected that I couldn't drink, so I didn't drink. And I went to the other program when I wasn't getting high, you know, and that's how I did for 2 years. When I wasn't getting high, I go to the other program. When I got high, I didn't need it, you know. And I just thought it was about, you go to meetings, you know, when you don't want to drink, and the meetings help you feel better, and then you don't drink. And that's all I knew. They had 12 steps on the wall. If they talked about them, I didn't hear it. You know, they might have talked about it. I didn't hear it. You know, you hear what you want to hear. But at any rate, what happened, I went to a party up in Connecticut. My only friends in the world were in Connecticut. And I went to this party up there, and I was doing well in the job. I was doing well, and I moved up quickly. I was being, you know, a lot of the skills that I had acquired in the Navy came to bear, and you know, and I moved up quickly. And what I didn't know about ego or none of that. I didn't know, you know, like how out of control you can get, you know, you get a little taste of success and all of a sudden you're the king of the goddamn world. And that's where I went. And I thought I was some hot shit at this job, and I wound up pissing a lot of people off. And I did a lot of things. When I finally got here and I started to, you know, work the steps, I was so embarrassed and ashamed of my behavior on that job, because I was just like, I was a hot mess, man. But you know, I went up to I had my best friend in the world was up in Connecticut. The only person that I felt like the only person that ever really got to know me, that I have actually let my guard down with, this guy Reed. And he had Hodgkin's disease, but they, you know, at that time that was a death sentence, but they figured he had 5 to 10 years left to live, you know. And you know, and Reed was about, you know, he was about like living. You talk about living in the moment. This guy was about doing everything today. Like him and his fiance traveled around the country, you know, in a camper for like 5 months, because he'd never been outside of Connecticut. And you know, they really did, you know, they got to see a lot. And we were walking on them back and at their house up in Connecticut. And I went up and I did too much of something that was going around in the party. And I wound up, I was getting sick. And the next thing I knew, I was on the ceiling of the upstairs hallway outside the bathroom. I had no idea how I got in the ceiling, but I was looking down and there was a bunch of people standing around the body on the floor, and they were saying my name. And then I knew what was going on. And the thing was, I felt better on that ceiling than I'd ever felt in my life. And I realized I might be checking out, but if this is what that is, I'm down with it. Let's go, you know, because I didn't understand how bad I felt. You just get used to it. You get used to feeling bad. And I didn't realize how much tension I had in my life until I was on that ceiling. And I was like, this is okay. And they picked me up and carried me down to the bedroom down at the end of the hallway. And I stayed on the ceiling for a while. And I was, you know, you know, kind of, I was good. I was good with whatever happened. And something pulled me back into that room down the hall. And my friends were all kind of freaked out. And you know, I'm still like floating around in this bedroom, you know. And I noticed my friend Reed was like, he's the only one that wasn't freaked out. And he was just sitting calmly at the foot of the bed. And I felt like he saw me out there, you know. I felt like he felt me. And we had that kind of a connection, me and him. When I was in the Navy, I could be 1,000 miles away and I'd have this conversation with my friend Reed, and we'd pick that conversation up when I went back to Connecticut. And it's like, it fucking happened. You know, we had some kind of psychic connection. And you know, for whatever reason, I wound up back in my body, and it took me a while till I could even talk or anything. They were taking me down to an emergency room, you know, and I really had this thing the whole time I was in the Navy. I was in the nuclear power program. Like you couldn't get busted with drugs, you know, or you get tossed out of the program. And I still had this thing in me where I didn't want drugs on my record, you know. So we got to they had me to the emergency room, and they're getting ready to take me in, and I was able to talk them out to take me in there. I said, I'm all right, you know. And I knew the whole time I was all right. I just didn't know how to tell them, you know. But then you know, my friend drove me down to the bus station. I think I hitchhiked up there, but I had to take a bus back because I had to work. And you know, and when he said goodbye to me at the bus station the last time I saw him alive, you know, 5 days later, I get the call that the only friend I ever had, the only person who ever got to know me, fucking died. And he died like 5 days after he brought me back from probably dying. I don't know what that was, but all I can say is for the next 6 months, I was never one to be really that introspective before that. I was always trying to do stuff out, you know, I was trying to be an athlete. I was always trying to do stuff out here. But I spent the next 6 months trying to figure out why the fuck he left. And I was still here. Because I'm telling you, I liked it up there on the ceiling. You know, I was a little pissed off, but it was also like, it wasn't right. He was a good guy. You know, I knew I wasn't that good. I knew I was kind of you know, I just took from life. I just took. And this guy was somebody, he was just always there for people and everything. And, you know, I mean, a real friend, you know, he's a much better friend to me than I was to him. And I spent 6 months, and you know, those meetings went out the window. I just sat in my apartment. I got high. I was a workaholic. I'd work 12 hours at the warehouse, and then I'd come home and I'd get high. And one night I was in that state, and I'd smoked a couple of joints, and they'd taken me off the lithium. This doctor had taken me off the lithium because I had an infection that I almost lost my finger from. And so this guy said, you can't be on that lithium while you're, you know, it'll impact the antibiotics. I think he was a quack, but to this day, I thank that man, because I'm off the lithium now. So I'm feeling that shit. And I'm sitting in that apartment, and I just felt such an overwhelming sense of loneliness. It was more overwhelming than I ever felt anything in my life. And I actually cried out, God, I'm alone. And, you know, and then, you know, I saw a book on my my kitchen counter. It was a recovery book, and I started reading it. And it's the first time I had any insight into. I've been going to meetings for 2 years, and I just thought it was like you go to meetings and you don't drink, and you know, and it's the first time I had any insight into this was a condition. It wasn't about a substance, it was a condition. And that there's the whole idea of a spiritual solution. I'd never heard that. And that book gave me hope. And I put the drugs down, and I started going back to those meetings. And about the second week, and I couldn't find the feeling that I got from reading that book in those meetings. It was different. But this guy told his story at the 12 Keys Clubhouse, and George knows what I'm talking about. And I'm, you know, I'm wrapped, you know, this story was a lot different. And he told it in such a way that he got away with saying some things, you know, that normally would get you tossed out of there, but he had a way of slipping it in there that an addict would know what the hell he was talking about, but an alkie wouldn't, you know. And he actually had that down to a fine art. And I went up to him afterwards, and I said, dude, I really, you know, you made a few references there that you know, I was curious about. And he kind of laughed, and he said, you must be an addict. And I was offended. I said, I'm not an addict, I'm an alcoholic. And he said, I'm sober 2 years, you know. And he just laughed. He was really a really cool guy, man. He just laughed, and he said, well, you should go to NA. And I'm like, what's that? He said, Narcotics Anonymous. I said, I don't do that shit. And you know, he laughed again. He said, it's for anything. It's for alcohol's a drug. He said, it's pot, anything that's mind or mood altering. And I'm like, and then he got me with, he said, they're a lot younger. I was like, okay, I'll check them out, you know, because I was tired of being that young guy that everyone would condescend to and say, oh, it's so nice that you're getting, you know, I probably spilled more than you drank. And I'd be like, you know, I'd be smiling back at them, but thinking, you have no fucking idea where I've been, man. You don't know what shit I've dealt with. You don't know what I've consumed. And, you know, and that stuff was just kind of, that wasn't helpful. You know, it wasn't helpful at all. I go out of my way not to do that with young people today. I don't condescend to people. They're, you know, everyone's an addict, you know, we're all an addict. Age is irrelevant. But anyway, I like the idea of young. So I went, and this meeting was only a mile from where I lived, you know, and I didn't know it, but there was only 3 meetings in the whole county. In the whole of Bucks County, there was 3 meetings, and 2 of them were a mile from where I lived. Tell me that ain't some shit. So I go down to this meeting. Now I'm 25, okay, and you know I've been, you know, I was in the Navy. I'd been to jail. I'd been around the block a few times. You know, I felt really old, even much older than 25. To be honest. And I walk into this meeting, and it's all these teenagers, man. They're like bouncing off the walls like teenagers do, you know. And they were, I mean, they looked like they were having a grand old time, but man, this wasn't like any meeting I ever saw. I figured this is some kind of a youth group or something, you know. And then when things settled down and when they read, I was like, oh, okay. Well, they don't read the same stuff they do in another place, but this stuff makes a little more sense to me, you know. I was kind of digging the reading. They're reading from that little white book, but I was really like, I'm looking at these kids like, what the fuck am I doing here, you know? And I think they're looking at me saying, what the fuck is he doing here, you know? And you know, because like, you know, I was looking and feeling very old, you know, and I, you know, I felt like I was crashing the party or something. And so I went out to get a cup of coffee. They had coffee set up out in the hallway. And I was definitely eyeballing the stairway, you know, at the end of the hall. I was like, man, this was a mistake. You know, I was sure of that. And my friend George came out, and he just started talking to me. And you know, like he didn't try to talk me into staying or anything like that. He just talked me one addict to another, you know, and he, you know, you know, if anybody knows the term elevator speech, George gave the best fucking elevator speech I've ever heard in my life at that coffee thing. In less than 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half, George was able to tell me what an addict was, what NA was about, total abstinence, you know, and what clean time was versus sobriety. Because I'm sure I said something to him like, oh, I got to, you know, he's like, I haven't seen you around here before. And I'm like, oh, I've been around for a couple of years. I'm sober 2 years, you know, and he's like, oh, okay. And he's very friendly. And he's like, well, you know, he says, this is Narcotics Anonymous. And here we abstain from all mind and mood altering substances, including alcohol and pot and all. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought about it for a second. I said, okay, I'm 5 days clean, you know, and that was easy. It was easy to say that, you know, and because like I really didn't hang on to that 2 years. I didn't even know what my clean date, what my sober date was or whatever with the other, because I wasn't that serious about it. And like I told you, I didn't even pay attention to those things on the wall and all that. But you know, at any rate, after talking with George for a minute or two, I wanted to go back in. You know, and there was like a spark had been struck, and I walked back in the meeting, and the thought occurred to me as I'm walking back in there that I heard somewhere, and this just came to me today. I will say I believe it came from my higher power, but I'm walking back in there, and the thought occurs to me. Somebody said that when I started using, I stopped growing emotionally. And I knew that I started using when I was 15, like on a regular basis when I was 15. I drank and smoked a joint or something when I was 14, but I started on a regular basis when I was 15. And I looked around the room and I said, well, I'm right here. These guys, I'm right with these guys. So get off your fucking high horse and listen, you know? And I got, you know, that I don't know where that came from, but you know, that was the best thing I could have thought, because I did listen. And the second half of that meeting, those kids fucking blew me away, man. They blew right through that loneliness that I've been feeling. You know, I felt so much. I didn't even know what it was. I'm driving home from the meeting. I'm like, what the fuck am I feeling? I mean, they were hugging me. They didn't hold hands and say the prayer at the end. They put their arms around each other. They welcomed me as one of them. You know, this old fucker, you know, And you know, it really touched me. And when I get home to my apartment, it occurred to me what I was feeling was hope. I hadn't felt hope in a long time. I mean, hope that I could fucking get clean. I had tried it when I got out of the Navy and I wanted to kill myself every day. It didn't make sense to try to get clean, you know? And I'm a pretty smart guy. And I'd gotten some of my mental faculties back, just a few of them. But at any rate, I went back the next day. You know, I was very intrigued, and man, I was so lonely. I was like, yeah, I'm done. And the next day they had a step meeting. And that's when that's when I first really got introduced to the 12 steps. Because like I say, they had them on the wall at that other place, but they never talked about them. And these guys were studying them. They were breaking them down. They were reading paragraph by paragraph and talking about what that means in their life. And I was super intrigued. I was like, man, oh man, this is like right where I'm supposed to be. And you know, and of course, you know, a lot of you know the story. That book they were reading from was the AA 12 and 12. And that was right around the time when you know, NA was starting to get serious about its own literature. There's a few people that were like really serious. They understood. NA up until 1980, NA had been around for 27 years, and it's in the fashion that comes from 1953, and it had barely made it outside. It had barely made it west of the Mississippi. In 1970, it arrived in Philadelphia with a little white book that a guy picked up from Jimmy Kay out in California, and it started to actually grow and thrive down in Georgia, Marietta, Atlanta, Tennessee had a foothold. There wasn't a meeting in New York City. There wasn't a meeting in all of New England. And I think it had only just started in DC area. And Philadelphia had been there for 10 years, although they had done a pretty goddamn good job of keeping anyone from finding them, you know. So, you know, anyway, you know, I just was so excited. And this guy, Steve, he took me around to meetings. You know, there were meetings all over, you know, Philadelphia area was huge. It was like a 3-state area. And it covered, you'd have to drive like an hour and 45 minutes to get to some parts of it. And Steve, every day he'd call me up and say, hey, you want to go to a meeting? I'd be like, yeah. And I had wheels. And, you know, so I'd pick Steve up and we'd go to a meeting all over. And I just got so excited. And this whole thing, it was like, I felt like this is, and I went up, you know, my usual month trip. I would go up to visit my friends in Connecticut once a month. We pulled each other through that winter after my friend Reed died, you know. It's hard losing your best friend when you're 24, and his fiance. I mean, shit, I had it easy compared to her. They were supposed to get married 3 weeks before he died, or 3 weeks after he died. So Peg and a few of my friends up there, we pulled each other through that winter. And but when I was up, whenever I showed up there, you know, the party started, and you know, I got up there as I planned every intention of telling them this wonderful thing I found. And instead I got high and I initiated. As soon as I got to my friend Dave's place in Niantic, I said, where's the dope? You know, and it was like I was somebody else. And I spent that whole weekend getting high and hating it, you know, because NA had already ruined me for that. You know, I couldn't enjoy it, you know, but I couldn't not do it. I was there, I was going to do it. And, you know, and it was 41 years ago yesterday that I drove back from Connecticut. It's a 4-hour drive to Bucks County. And I probably bawled my eyes out half that trip. And I felt such defeat. I felt defeat down to the bottom of my toes. I felt like, oh my God, I couldn't do this. I couldn't be honest with them about who I am. And I grieved that I would not be able to go back up there again. You know, on my own, and they had been my friends. They had been my dearest friends, and I remember thinking, I'll never have friends like that again. You know, I'll never have people that know me like they knew me, and how fucking wrong I was. You know, I came back, and you know, I didn't. All I knew to do was go up to that group in that little church and tell them what happened. And nobody said you shouldn't have gone that. Nobody said people, places, and things. They just fucking loved me, man. You know, they said, you're an addict. You did what addicts do. Now do what we do. you know, you know, and my friend George suggests, he said, I don't know. I said that the people that I've seen that stick are the people that get involved. And he said, I think the Saturday night meeting needs someone to make coffee. And so I made coffee for Saturday night, and Sunday night needed a secretary. And I said I could type, you know, and, you know, somebody said, well, there's really not typing involved, you know, but there did become typing involved, you know, because that group, the next group conscience meeting they had, they made a decision to stop using that 12 and 12. They had a group conscience, and they had two options. They could stop being a step meeting. I shouldn't say they at this point, it was we, because it wasn't me anymore, it was we. And we could either stop using the step, that step book, and stop studying the steps and become just a regular meeting like Saturday night, or we could continue to break a tradition and keep using it. But, you know, in group conscience, magical things happen. When God works through a group conscience, amazing things happen. And in that group conscience, the amazing thing that happened was they said, why don't we write our own fucking steps? You know? And man, this is a bunch of fucking kids, okay? You know? but they were serious. They were fucking dead serious about recovery. And we all, at that point, I was already in on this whole concept that we, you know, this is a life raft. I got thrown a life raft. I could actually stop using and not want to kill myself. And these guys would help me. And these steps, we knew these steps had something to do with what was going to keep us clean. We didn't know a whole lot about them, but we had the audacity to think we could fucking write them, you know? So we did. We just shared our experience with what we knew about them, and we met in the guy's apartment, and we recorded those conversations, and then I would take them and I would transcribe them, you know, and then I would type them up, and it gave me something to do. And I noticed that when I was typing those transcribed things, and I had to try to edit them in a way that we could use them in the meetings, it was suddenly the all the shit going on in my brain like calmed down, you know, and I felt a sense of peace. And George will tell you, for the next 2 years, if you wanted to find peace, just look for the typewriter, because I was most at ease behind that typewriter. I had a lot of social anxiety going on. I didn't know that term then. When I look back on it now, I had a lot of social anxiety going on. You know, the VA told me I had a nervous condition. You know, I was very nervous, you know. But when I was doing that work, there was something golden that happened, and it sustained me, you know, and because we didn't have anybody that could take us through the steps, but you know, we had that, and we got we all went in, we all went all in, you know. We went to a convention, we ran into the people doing the work on the book. They were just starting. They were thrilled to find us. We were thrilled to find them. They, you know, when we said we've been working on the steps and the traditions, they were like, hallelujah. You know, Bo was like, George thought Bo was a preacher or something, because he's saying hallelujah when we called him on the phone to try to hook up with him. And we became joined at the hip with Marietta, you know, over the next year and a half. There was a constant, and this is before internet, this is before any we didn't have cell phones, but we were in constant communication between Marietta and Bucks County, Pennsylvania. There was a solid line of communication that was going on at all times. There was letters going back and forth. Francis found this letter that I wrote to Bo like in July of 1980. God knows how he found that, but you know, he sent that to me a couple months ago. I was like, holy cow, you know, I didn't realize I was already thinking along the lines. I was already thinking about a newsletter for the Philadelphia area, which became the Clean Sheet. You know, I think George, you know, was thought it was a good idea, and you know, you just got to give an addict say, hey, that's a good idea, and an addict runs with it, you know. And I ran with it, and a lot of people jumped on board. We had such a creative group. Those kids were so creative. We had this girl that was a fantastic artist, and she did some artwork. We did some posters. George was the public information guy for Philadelphia, although I think we called it public relations then. And George was like, you know, George would just like, we'd all, get together. He was the guy with the clean time. Like he had 3 years clean time. So everybody figured, well, George was on it, and when he got involved with something, it was just easy. It was easy to get involved with him because you know what, it was fun. We had so much fun, but I got pretty serious about this the public relations part because I was like, man, I couldn't find you guys 3 years ago when I really needed you. So I got down with it, and I think when George wound up getting George got involved with the Second East Coast Convention, so I started doing the public relations for Philadelphia, and that fall we got a spot on the World's, and the Philadelphia Phillies were in the World Series for the first time since 1950, and we got a spot in Game 6 of the World Series for NA. If you want to use drugs, that's your problem. If you want to stop, that's ours. I think that's what we said, something like that. But at any rate, we did a lot with that. We got something in the newspaper. We got and we tried not to break traditions. I don't know, we might have broken a few, but I was like, hey, we got to let people know we're here, and so we did whatever we could, and it was just I can't remember all the things that we did over those my first 2 years clean was just a whirlwind of activity, and there's times George and I have sat down and tried to piece together everything we did back then, and I know we haven't remembered everything. There's just a lot of things that we missed, but thanks. Got it. Oh, Alfred E. Newman. So anyway, I'm going to jump ahead because we were able to get very involved with the work on what initially was the Gray Book and then became the basic text. Our whole house did. Everybody that lived in Ivyland, because I found this house in the country, and we moved in because neither one of us me and George couldn't afford our apartments anymore. So, because I got fired from my job, 2 months clean, I got fired from my job. I went through 17 in those next 4 years. I had a hard time with dealing with life and life's terms. But eventually I had the good fortune of finding a group where I was able to go through the 12 steps of recovery. And then all the insanity, because my life was insane for those 4 years, and you can only sustain so long in that. And I got to a point where I couldn't go on anymore. I couldn't live on the fumes of just service. I had to actually experience 12 steps in my life, and I got to experience those steps in my life. And that was when my life really began. I got to have a lot of nice memories. It's nice to look back and remember all that stuff we did. I'm so glad that we had that opportunity. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, and I would never want to have to relive that, because it was hell to live through. Because I was an addict, clean, but not in recovery. And we so many of us were so fortunate to have that work, because eventually, NA did figure it out, and it did get guides, step guides, and people did get the chance to actually experience recovery here. And and I got that opportunity, and I never looked back. I found, after 17 jobs in 4 years, I found a job. I didn't want to take it. I was too. It was an office job. I had a job in a machine shop. I had a manly job. I was going to be a machinist. And my father and my fiance at the time. Oh, I had a fiance. Yeah, I couldn't even come close to any kind of relationship for those 4 years. I had a few, wild romances that never went past the first or second moments of intimacy, but they were world class in my mind, and but this one was just real, and and I got engaged with her, and we'll celebrate 36 years next month. Yeah, next month. And yeah, and so I took this job that she and my dad thought had more of a future than the machine shop job. And it was an entry-level position. I got it because I could type 65 words a minute, and guess where I learned that skill? And today I'm a senior executive. I'm at the highest level of government. It's a government agency. I've been with the same agency, not just with the government. I've been with the same agency for 36 years, 36 and a half years, and all I've done is just practice these principles. I didn't do anything special. I never got a degree. I'm a rare breed. I don't think I don't know another executive that doesn't have a degree of some sort. And I have no degree. I just have 24 principles that I get to apply in my life every day. I got 12 steps and I got 12 traditions. And those traditions work really well at work, really well. And I get to apply them. And, and the people who work for me know that I've got their back, and so they'll go to the ends of the earth for me. And because they know I'll have to go to the ends of the earth for them too. And these principles work in all our affairs. And I'm just so delighted, Joe, that you asked me to come here. This meeting was really special. I feel like I talked too much about, how I got here, but anyway, it was fun to talk and so much fun to be able to share my journey with you guys. And for the new people in the room, and I know a few of you well, this program works, brother, and it doesn't work. You just get to be clean and like hang on by your fingertips for the next 41 years. Because I tell you, I would have let go 36 years ago. Because I did let go 36 years ago. Only it turned out that was my surrender, So, fortunately, my higher power had my back, as did a lot of people in this room. And, I love my friends in NA, and I love life, man. What can I say? The guy who I didn't think I wanted to live past 30. Now I want to live to be 100. I only got 34 more years to go. I could do that I could do it a day at a time. Just wake up in the morning, say the third step prayer, do my shit, and and it's good life. It's a good life. And anyway, I'll yield to the floor. Thanks everybody.
Thank you, Pete.
Love you, Pete.
Thank you,
Love
Pete.
you.
Amazing.
41
Pete.
years. Awesome.
Thanks for sharing, Pete.